Today we are discussing the Scarlet-Colored beast and the transition period between it and the Leopard-Like beast. There is a lot of confusion concerning these two beasts, and this video is part of a series which will address some of these issues. Our first video was about the Leopard-Like beast and the infliction and the healing of its deadly wound. This video will touch only briefly on these things, but will especially concentrate on the Scarlet-Colored beast and the mysterious woman who rides it. What does it all mean? So, in this video, we will go over the Protestant nations, Antitypical Assyria, the transition period between the Leopard-Like and the Scarlet-Colored beast, the 7 kings and the 7 mountains, parts of the beast and the woman, the 3 sittings of the woman, 2 sealings, 2 confederacies, and 2 times of trouble. And finally, the summary, important quotes you need to know.
As to the denotation of the heads, inspiration itself being the only source of information, we again go to the prophecy of Daniel 7. There it is seen that the 4th beast's little horn, having the eyes and a mouth of man, actually was a hornhead, a combination of 2 separate elements. And it being symbolical of the church and state government, a combination of civil and religious powers during the Middle Ages, settles beyond doubt that while the horn part stands for the civil phase, the head part stands for the religious phase. Logically, too, because religion should be the brains of any government. Furthermore, civil governments were originally founded upon church governments. The symbolism thus clearly connotes that an atheistic government is about as good as is any horn apart from its head. Such might even be compared to a chicken with its head off. In its plight, the headless chicken jumps with great force, but it knows not where it is going, and it lives but a few minutes. Moreover, the government following after the civil authority was torn away from the religious political setup of the Middle Ages is brought to view in the symbolism of the leopard-like beast, the one that sequentially follows in the line of beast symbolisms. In it, the religious political governments having been dissolved is shown by a common wounded head, a religious system without civil authority, one suffering from a deadly blow, obviously from the blow which tore away its civil authority.
In contemplating the changes that came about in our last study, the blow to popery or papal rule started with Martin Luther and his protests, not with Berthier, the French general. We must understand and acknowledge that the only thing that could have broken the ironclad hold of the papal states would be the truth of God handed down from heaven. This is what enabled Luther to stand against priests, popes, and emperors. The Reformation is what dealt the blow. Then, as part of that blow, the Pope is taken into captivity by Berthier, the French general, in 1798. Then, as a third part of that blow, in 1870, the Kingdom of Italy invades the Papal States and they lose all of their civil power. So we know that the United States began to rise as a result of the Protestant Reformation in 1776. And as mentioned, it springs out of the Protestant religion, but they don't create an authoritarian state as the one they came from. They build a free society, one in which they can worship freely, and the Protestant Reformation can thrive. And it is here that the Church of God is born. So now we shall talk about the next beast, the Scarlet-Colored beast, and the woman who rides the beast. And I'm going to start with reading Rev.17, starting with verses 1.
And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither. I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters.
Now I want you to note this, that John first sees the harlot that's connected with the scarlet-colored beast on many waters. And this is verse 1 of the chapter that debuts this scarlet-colored beast, Rev.17. Let's continue on with verse 2.
With whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness. And I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. And the angel said unto me, Wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman, and of the beast that carrieth her, which hath the 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was and is not, and yet is. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth, and there are 7 kings. 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition.
The reason why we know this beast is the 7th beast on the timeline is what the Bible says in verse 11. Now let's read that again. Verse 11 says,
And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition.
Let's look at the chart to determine this. If we look at this timeline, we can see that it starts with creation as a starting point, which endeavors to show biblical world history. There are 7 universal kingdoms from creation to the millennium, but there is no beast represented by the world civilization before the flood, the antediluvian world. If we count the beasts that there are on this chart, or that are described in the Bible, there are 7 beasts. Okay, lion 1, bear, Medo-Persia 2, leopard with 4 heads 3. Now this beast, that dreadful nondescript beast, is beast number 4. Leopard-like is beast number 5. And 2-horned beast is beast number 6. And then this beast right here is beast number 7. To exemplify this, let's read a statement out of 2SR page 118, paragraph 3.
Revelation 17:11, And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. To unmask the apparent mystery, all that is necessary is to count the prophetic beasts representing periods and nations. Beginning with the first beast, and as we close with the last, he must be the 8th, and yet of the 7. The lion, Babylon, is the first. The bear, Medo-Persia, is the 2nd. The 4-headed leopard, Grecia, is the 3rd. The nondescript Rome is the 4th. The leopard-like, from the fall of Rome to 1929, is the 5th. The one with the lamb-like horns, United States, is the 6th. The Scarlet-Colored, from 1929 to the end of this present world, is the 7th. the same scarlet-colored that shall ascend from the bottomless pit and go into perdition, from the resurrection of the wicked to their second death, is the eighth. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the eighth, and is of the seven, and goeth into perdition. He is the eighth, but is of the seven, because he was and is not, and yet is. That is, the scarlet-colored beast appears on the stage of action the second time. First, prior to the millennium, and second, after the millennium by the second resurrection. Therefore, he is the eighth, but is of the seven, and goeth into perdition, the second death of the wicked. Simple as it is, yet most perfect, it tells the truth and corrects error. Here we see another set of numbers including the entire chain of beasts. The red dragon in Revelation 12:3 cannot be numbered with the numerous beasts, for he is not a symbol of a particular nation or government. He represents Satan and his schemes at certain times, for he is called the devil and Satan.
We will deal with the beast that was, is not, and yet is in just a minute. We'll explain that. But first, if you are a present truth believer, there are several statements that Brother Hadaf makes about the scarlet-colored beast time period starting in 1929, one of them we just read. Because of this and other statements Brother Hadaf made regarding the leopard-like beast's wound healing and the scarlet-colored beast's rise, people think that the healing of the wound on the leopard-like beast means that the scarlet-colored beast has fully risen and the woman is riding. And the quote we just read, Brother Hadaf seems to end the leopard-like beast time period in 1929, but that would not be correct, and we can see this easily if we study diligently. The 1929 date serves as a marker of the deadly wound healing and communism rising. If you watched the last video, you saw that the healing of the wound began in 1890 after the Adventist Church rejected the loud cry message. In 1929, we saw the papal power regain its civil power, which was the second stage of healing. But we have not seen the last stage of healing, which is despotism. Despotism under the leopard-like beast. Because of the continued confusion on these two beasts, many don't see that healing on the leopard-like beast, which is despotism. They don't see it as an event belonging to the leopard-like beast time period. The healing of the wound brings the beast back to a condition that previously existed. Remember, the hornhead beast, that papal rule reigns contemporaneously, that means at the same time, as the leopard-like beast before the wound was inflicted. So that healing just takes the beast back to that state before the wound was inflicted. The healing of the wound was explained in detail in our last video, so I encourage you to go back and watch the video entitled The Leopard-Like Beast, His Deadly Wound Healed, to get a full treatment on exactly what the healing of the wound is. There are many other things yet to be fulfilled under the leopard-like beast time period, such as the gigantic war, Assyria being crushed, and Ezekiel 9. Now we shall endeavor to clear up the confusion on the time period starting for the scarlet-colored beast. Let's read a statement.
The period represented by the scarlet-colored beast commenced in 1929, at which time the deadly wound was healed. But his career is not fully developed until the woman shall sit upon his back. Chapter 17 begins with the rise of Babylon the Great and her dominion. Figuratively speaking, the scarlet-colored beast, the beast she drives, rules, is her dominion. This ecclesiastical world government develops after the leopard-like beast symbolization, chapter 13, ends its career. For the horns of the scarlet-colored beast are crownless, whereas the horns of the leopard-like are crowned. Its crowned horns show the world ruled by crowned kings, which already are about to pass away, and the scarlet-colored beast's crownless horns show a crownless world ruled by Babylon, who rides the beast, rules it. This beast, says inspiration, was and is not, and yet is. That is, he lived before the 1,000 years, and therefore was, does not live during the 1,000 years, and therefore is not, lives by resurrection after the millennium, and therefore is.
During the millennium, the earth will be void and waste, a bottomless pit. And that's exactly where all the wicked are going, who will be slain by the brightness of Jesus' coming. They will die and cease to exist during the millennium while we're taken up to heaven. So that's why the beast is described as the beast that was and is not. He was in existence at the time of the second coming, but he does not exist during the millennium, and that is the is not phase. The wicked who are alive at the time of Jesus' second coming are destroyed, and they become a type for the wicked from all the ages who will rise up after the millennium. They rise up, they come up again, and this is the yet is phase. They come up to receive their final sentence or punishment. They are destroyed for holding on to their sins, and they're destroyed for all eternity. They never exist again. That's why it says in verse 8 that the beast shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition. And then it says, and they that dwell on the earth shall wonder. Again, the saints are going to be looking when the wicked come up. The wicked are going to wonder. They're going to say, wow, how did I get here? And it's just going to be an amazing sight. You're going to see the wicked from the time of Adam all the way to the second coming of Jesus. And they're going to march upon the city of God, like you can read in the Great Controversy, thinking that they will be able to defeat because they will greatly outnumber God's people. But that's when they receive their final sentence. Fire comes from God and destroys the wicked, and that's the second death. That's the eternal death, of which there is no recovery.
The Seven Kings. World Beast Classifications.
So now let's go over the seven kings. You can see that on the chart they correlate with the great image of Daniel 2, and it starts the numbering with the antediluvian world as number 1, then Babylon is number 2 as the wings specify, and so on, with Medo-Persia being number 3. So they are numbered in line with that great image. However, when you get to the last two beasts, the Leopard-Like and the Scarlet-Colored beast, they are actually lumped together, being that they share the time period represented by the 10 toes on the great image. Let's read a statement where Brother Hadib explains that in 2SR, page 118, paragraph 1.
And there are 7 kings. 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. The king, that is, must be the one in existence at this present time, and the one that is not yet come must be in the future. Consequently, the 5 that are fallen must be in the past. This would be the only fair position for one to take without doing injury to the holy word of God, as it has reference to the entire world's history under sin. We must consider the number of universal empires, or periods, since the world began. There is one before the flood, as previously explained. The second is Babylon, the third, Medo-Persia, fourth, Grecia, and the fifth is the Roman monarchy. These 5 are fallen. The one that is the present civilization since the fall of Rome under the symbol of the Leopard-Like and the Scarlet-Colored beasts, to the commencement of the millennium, which a period is termed Rome, in her broken state represented by the feet and toes of the great image of Daniel 2. These are the 6 kings. 5 are fallen, and the one is. The other that is not yet come must be the period after the millennium, corresponding with the beast that is to ascend from the bottomless pit.
Symbolisms in the vision. 7 heads, mountains, and the beast.
Revelation chapter 17, verse 9. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains, on which the woman sitteth. All the heads being present on the beast and the woman sitting on them proves that all 7 mountains must be in existence at the same time. They cannot be consecutive, for the woman sits on them all, which denotes one great union of the heads by the medium of the woman. They are called mountains, as God's denomination is called mountain in Isaiah 2:2 and Micah 4:1. The mountain, singular, is God's denomination, but the mountains, plural by both Isaiah and Micah, have reference to the same denominations represented by the heads on the beast. Thus, the 7 heads are 7 mountains.
Okay, so we're going to review the different parts of the Scarlet-Colored beast. First, you must know the Scarlet-Colored beast is the 7th period of time. It is the time right before the millennium, the last period of time, and it's also the final world government. Okay, it is a later time period within those iron clay feet. Okay, it shares that with the leopard-like beast. The iron and clay feet, also known as the present world, on the great image of Daniel 2. Okay, the woman, her name is Babylon the Great, and she sits on the beast. She first sits on the heads, we'll explain that in a minute, and then she sits on the beast itself, showing an international system which rules churches, the heads, and civil powers, the horns. So when she sits on that back, she's doing both. Okay, that's an international political economic system. Okay, false system of worship. Now, the crownless horns, as you can see, the world is no longer at a state where it has monarchies. Okay, the crown horns belong to the leopard-like beast. That's when the European kings received their kingdom. So Brother Hada classifies those 3 periods of time as starting with the nondescript beast before the European kings receive their crowns, and then the time where the leopard-like begins to rise, those horns are crowned. And then again, in the time of the Scarlet-Colored beast, there is no more crowns on the horns, which denotes that the monarchies had disappeared. And simply because of the fact that monarchies are waning now, we can see that the Scarlet-Colored beast is soon to rise. In fact, the horns have begun rising. Brother Hada says in 1929, the beast began to rise. He was talking more specifically about the horns, about communism. And he said that the career of the beast would not be fully developed until the woman sits on her back. So we've seen a slow rise as communism gains power and popularity, especially now and today. That happened primarily from 1929 and especially after World War II. So communist is going to be the next dominant civil power, represented by the 10 horns on the Scarlet-Colored beast. Okay, so its attributes, its similarities, the 7 heads and 10 horns, shows that this is the beast that succeeds the leopard-like beast, although it is not the leopard-like beast like some people believe. The leopard-like beast wound healing is not that it transforms into the Scarlet-Colored beast. No, the leopard-like has a career and a pathway that must end, and with that, the scarlet-colored beast will rise up, but it rises up during a time of peace, as we have read. So it cannot rise up fully until after that gigantic war. And it rises up because the world is looking for a brotherhood to bring it back together, something that will bring world peace. Okay, but it's the devil's final trap. So the scarlet-colored beast depicts the final world government. And as we discussed, this beast is alive at the second coming. It's slain at that time. And it is not during the millennium. And then it exists again after the millennium when all the wicked come up. And that's the yet is phase.
The transition period of the leopard-like and scarlet-colored beast.
Now, we talked about this in our last study, that part of the end acts of the leopard-like beast is that it will suffer a gigantic loss plus other key events in the gigantic war that's going to happen in these last days about Jerusalem. It might be called World War III, but we know it's World War II resumed because we've been looking for this as present truth believers for a while now. So the end acts of the leopard-like is that the Confederacy of Isaiah 8 is happening. During this time, we will be able to recognize the man 666. Okay, that's the man that's at the head of the U.S. at the time these oppressive laws are going to start coming forth. There will be confederacy at the end of the leopard-like beast stage. Okay. A wicked counselor will be revealed that will come out of the Protestant nations. We don't know who it's going to be, but we will recognize it because he will take action against the saints of God. So Ezekiel 9 will occur because it has to, because the false brethren in the church begin to turn against us and turn us into the authorities, which is in Great Controversy, page 675. It's also in the typology of Esau and Jacob. We know that Esau is a type because the Bible talks about him throughout the New Testament. And also some of the minor prophets also talk about Jacob as a type. So we know that there's going to be a conflict that occurs with these two types within the Adventist church, which Ezekiel 9 has to happen in order to save the church. Because once this confederacy is set up of church and state in the United States, what's going to happen is they will ask the church to join. And then we will enter into the time of Jonah, where we have to protest and tell our brethren in the church, hey, say ye not a confederacy to all them who say a confederacy. We're saying, hey, don't join. These evangelicals and these Protestants that are coming from the fallen churches that are telling you to join in their union, do not join it. And we have to warn them that the judgment is impending. And if they join this, that's going to be the last straw for them. Because remember, in the type, when we have Israel, the 10th tribe kingdom, the larger body of Israelites, they're joining up with Syria, okay, a heathen government. And when they join up with Syria, a heathen nation, God says that's it for them. There will no longer be a people anymore. They will cease to be a people. And so what we have after that confederation that happened in the type is that Israel ceases to be a nation. They are carried away by the nation of Assyria, all 10 tribes. And what we have left is Judah, the 2-tribe kingdom. So that's basically what's going to happen. It's just going to happen in the Christian dispensation and the church that God has organized as antitypical Judah in the Christian dispensation, which is the Seventh-day Adventist church. We will see this typology played out to the very T, and Esau will come against us. Now, some may make peace with us as the type teaches, but for the most part, they're going to be the most effective agents of Satan, the Great Controversy says, to stir up the rulers against us. So after Ezekiel 9 occurs, this moment of conflict in the church, this great shaking, the devil will get very angry because now, remember, he's not trying to purify the church at all. Once the church is purified, God is the one that does the purifying through Ezekiel 9. He's going to be enraged because now he knows the 144,000 are going to, and those sealed with them are going to enter into the kingdom. That's when his rage happens, and he comes down with great fury. He does not want to see them on Mount Zion with the Lamb. He does not want to see them instrumental in bringing in the second fruits, which are the great multitude, all those from the fallen churches, and also any heathens or anyone else that's going to come in. Remember during the Mark of the Beast time, they have to come in right away. He doesn't want us to be there to receive them. So he, in his great fury, that's when he sets up the Sunday law and the death decree. Okay? That death decree and that mandatory Sunday law and oppression against Sabbath keepers happens after Ezekiel 9. And then in the transition period between the Leopard-Like, we see that pathway. If I can go back to the chart where it shows the Leopard-Like beast, once he does that action, his deadly wound is healed, which is the church-state confederacy. That's the last healing. That's the final stage. You can see his pathway goes all the way down. Okay, that's his time era ending. And so this beast, when I read that quote about civil governments actually coming from the influence of the church, this beast right here, the Protestant nations, comes from the influence of the Protestant churches. This is actually a Protestant civil power. This beast, if we can name it with the title, is the Protestant nations. The Protestant nations, they rise as that deadly wound is inflicted on the papal power. But we can see that the Protestant nations, their rule isn't till the millennium. It will wane and it will end, and another beast must come up. That's depicted by the Scarlet-Colored beast. So the last thing that takes away God's blessing from the Protestant nations, antitypical Assyria, and the U.S. is antitypical Nineveh, is that they join church with state and they begin to oppress the people of God. And so that causes them to lose the gigantic war, and everybody's going to see that God is doing this, because it's going to look like, from the way that their strength is set up, the way that they've allied themselves and made this coalition, joining church with states, bringing the nations together and the churches together, they think that they're sure to win. Because remember, Isaiah 8 says, they think God is with them. They're saying God is with us. And we have to say, no, God is not with you. God is with us. Don't do this confederacy. Don't join church with state. So during that transition period, that's when the kingdom is set up. And it has to be prepared, because once the second fruits come in from the great multitude, it's going to be a multitude no man can number. So what we're looking at now, when we look at the Scarlet-Colored beast, we're looking at the seventh universal kingdom, the seventh period of time. And it's actually the beast that will oppress the second fruits, the great multitude. Remember, we are oppressed under the Protestant nations, when the Protestant nations rule, the Leopard-Like beast. When we enter into the Scarlet-Colored beast phase, we will see that this is the beast that will oppress the great multitude, those who are going to come out of those fallen churches and any other religion. So this is the world of the future. Now, to review, the beast looks much like the leopard-like beast. However, what is absent are its crowns, denoting that the world is passing from one of monarchies to crownless, a world without monarchies. It is also seen rising in the wilderness and not the sea, as are the previous beasts, denoting it comes up during a time of peace. Remember, the leopard-like, all the other beasts come up during the time of strife with the ocean and stuff. And then this beast is seen in the wilderness by itself. And it comes up after the gigantic war that is experienced at the end of the leopard-like beast's journey. So the woman who rides the beast represents the apostate system of religion, and the beast represents her dominion. The 7 heads represent Christendom. So let's read some statements. 2SR page 158. The beast is a symbol of the entire present world, both civil, 10 horns, and religious, 7 heads. As the woman sitting on the heads denotes union of churches, just so, sitting on the beast represents internationally the church and state governed by the same head. Therefore, an international system of religion and a combination of church and state. The woman is the international system of religion, of false religion. The horns, civil powers. The heads, churches. In such a system, the great men of earth will see a vision of settling the troubles of the world, welding the people and the nations into a worldwide brotherhood, fulfilling by a medium of religion 1 Thessalonians 5:3. For when they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, and they shall not escape. Though their intention is to reduce crime as well as wars, remember, Antitypical Assyria, the Protestant nations have suffered a crippling defeat. They have seen the kingdom being set up by miraculous means. They're afraid for the ensign, the Bible says. They are afraid of the ensign. The ensign is the kingdom being set up. And it says, who are these that fly as doves to the windows? This means that the chariots of the Lord are coming in to gather his people from all the 4 corners of the earth, to gather his elect. Okay, they're going to see this and they're going to be scared. Okay, and this is really the only reason why the 2-horned beast can be instrumental in the Scarlet-Colored beast phase to bring about this international system of worship. Okay, because they are no longer the dominant world power. It's communism who is dominating the world at this time. And we can see that the rise of communism is happening right before our eyes, that the communist nations are getting more and more powerful. So though their intention is to reduce crime as well as wars, their hope will be in vain. We are also told that it will be based on some fear. And at the time of the Scarlet-Colored beast, this fear is communism. In 2TG number 41, page 17, paragraph 1, he writes,
The world sees communism as a hydra-headed monster behind a bush, and the nations are already, so to speak, smiting their knees one against the other while they look at it. Their safety, however, does not depend on fear and armament, nor on the man we elect for president, but on God, on him who holds the earth in space and who still rules the affairs of mankind. From the dawn of history till today, the great nations that have fallen fell when they were best armed and most independent of God. This should be a great lesson to all, but who realizes it?
But they will basically be trying to bring the world together in opposition to the kingdom being set up. And they think that they can bypass the way that God sets up his people by simply having this appearance of religion, okay, and having this appearance of godliness. They think that that's going to give them favor. They're not reading the signs. They have already rejected the Sabbath truth, because remember, that's come out during the Assyrian time phase. We've preached it. We've gone to Nineveh and to the Assyrian nations and we said, hey, this is the true Sabbath. What you're endeavoring to do to force people to worship on a day that's pagan is not part of God's will. So they're raising up. It's like they're trying for a second round to get the entire world to accept this system of religion. And this is when the mark of the beast comes out, right? The mark of the beast. And then you see in Revelation 13, you see wonders starting to be used. Miraculous means false miracles that the false prophet will do in the side of the beast and stuff. And the two-horned beast will be saying, hey, yeah, come worship this system.
God, therefore, for the sake of his own will, puts in the hearts of the communists, or communist-like powers, the 10 horns of the scarlet-colored beast who hate the woman, hate religion, as does communism, to give their kingdom unto the beast until the words of God shall be fulfilled. Revelation 17:17. Now the statement to give their kingdom implies that they have a kingdom to give. In verse 12, however, we are told that they have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. When both statements are put together, then the statements say that communism could have a kingdom, could rule the world. But God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree, and give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. They therefore only receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast, after which they destroy the woman, the church and state system, and take the kingdom to themselves. Revelation chapter 17, verse 17.
The 3 sittings: water, heads, and the beast.
We're going to go on to the 3 sittings. Some of you have seen this before, but we're going over it because of the new people that are on. And when we read Revelation 17, we noticed that in Revelation 17:1, the harlot was sitting first on the waters. And then next in Revelation 17:9, she sits on the heads. And then in Revelation 17:3, she sits on the beast. The woman is seen sitting on the waters, and we know that waters represents multitudes and peoples. The woman is seen sitting on the heads. We know that the heads represent religious bodies, okay, of the scarlet-colored beast during that time. That denotes a church federation. And then as the woman sits on the beast, that denotes she is ruling both the civil and religious powers universally. So let's read some statements.
Note that the woman sits on the waters, also on the heads, and on the beast. See Revelation chapter 17, verses 1, 3, and 9. As it would be impossible for one person to sit on all 3 objects at one time, the prophetic symbols reveal a spiritual fraud in 3 different periods. Thus, John declares, I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, not upon the waters, nor upon the heads. Before he saw her, the angel said, The woman sitteth upon many waters. It was the angel also who added, The 7 heads are 7 mountains, on which the woman sitteth. See verses 1, 9. Thus, John saw her last exploit only, sit upon the beast. Consequently, the symbol, sitting on the waters, is her first act, according to the vision. Therefore, her first achievement, sitting on the waters, must have been in the past from the time the prophetic symbol is revealed. Hence, the sitting on the heads becomes her second accomplishment, and the sitting on the beast is the last, at which time she is judged. As the Protestant churches are represented by the heads, she could not have sat on them before the Reformation, for they were not as yet in existence. As the heads upon which the woman sits are unharmed, it is evident that the prophetic symbol is to meet its fulfillment sometime after the deadly wound of the leopard-like beast of Revelation 13:3 is healed. The symbol, sitting on the heads, denotes union of churches, for she sits on them. Therefore, when Catholicism, Protestantism, and Spiritualism clasp each other's hand by the medium of a league, then it could be said, the woman sitteth on the heads. The symbol of the woman sitting on the beast will meet its fulfillment when that religious federation shall make an alliance with the powers of the world. Such an act would give the woman full control of the entire beast, horns, and heads, the world. At that time, the following scripture will meet its perfect fulfillment. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast. Revelation 13, verses 16, 17.
So remember, we were talking about Revelation 13 is also described what's going to happen with the scarlet-colored beast, the miracles and the lying wonders, and the false prophet that stands with the United States in its endeavor to get everyone to worship this beast. And the reason why this beast looks so similar to the leopard-like beast is because it's a succession, it's a timeline. And it's going to make an image of the leopard-like beast before that deadly wound was inflicted. Okay, so it's going to, when Brother Hodder describes image, he says it's like a photograph. Okay, so if we were to take a photograph of how the world was ruled by the papal states with all the entities of the leopard-like beast, which is, the 10 universal civil powers, the 7 heads, and then that wound is not inflicted yet. That's the photograph that the scarlet-colored beast is going to be, okay, when this woman sits on its back. It's going to have a complete rule over the heads and the horns, which are the religious and the civil powers. And it's an international religious political system because it will control all the world's commerce, okay? And you won't be able to buy or sell or do anything if you don't take this mark of the beast. Okay, so let's read about the papal rule of the multitude's waters. Thus the symbol of the woman sitting on the waters represents the period before the Reformation. This was true during the period of papal supremacy, for at the time that the papacy ruled the Roman world, peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues, thus the woman sat on the waters during the 1260 prophetic years of Daniel 7:25, but she is yet to sit on the heads and on the beast. Had she sat on the nondescript beast instead of the waters, it would have been wrongly symbolized, for the woman, by the tool of Catholicism, did not reign over all the world, the beast, but over many peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues, many waters. Therefore, the symbol sitting on the scarlet-colored beast denotes an international religio-political system. Said the angels, the 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth, Rev. 17:9. It has been previously explained that the heads represent the present-day apostate Christendom. See pages 88 through 96. They are called mountains, denominations, 7 in number, meaning all. As the prostitute sits on all 7, the symbol with unmistakable evidence reveals that so-called Christendom will submit itself to be governed by one head, of which the woman is a symbol. That's the church confederacy. Preliminary to that miracle-working power, Protestantism, Catholicism, and spiritualism will have grasped each other's hands by means of a church federation. The difference in opinion in doctrinal points will be considered of no vital importance to salvation. They will see in that apparently innocent union a great movement for the settlement of differences as well as for the conversion of the world. At the appearing of the false prophet and of Satan himself, their expectation would be realized, and the ushering in of the long-expected millennial time of peace shall be proclaimed to be at hand. Thus, on the surface, it will bear evidence that the world's crises are about to end. But as God's people have been warned of it all, they refuse to worship the image of the beast, which is a false international religion, and will be charged as rebellious disturbers of the peace and troublemakers. This will bring the great persecution of Revelation 12:17. And remember, that's when the devil becomes enraged with the people that have the testimony of Jesus, which is the spirit of prophecy, and keep the commandments of God. To them it will be said, Art thou he that troubleth Israel? As the saints answer them in the manner of the prophet of Elijah, Nay, but in that ye have forsaken the commandment of the Lord, and thou hast followed Balaam, it will incur the displeasure of the wicked and cause them to enrage against the innocent. Let's read more about the false prophet and the woman sitting on the beast. Now remember, this is when it goes worldwide, when she sits on the beast. While the revelators saw in vision the beast who numbers 666 and the false prophet enforcing a false religion by laws and miracles within the borders of the government represented by the two-horned beast, he was shown another interesting sight. And he says, and I saw, he says, a woman sit on a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet-colored, decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a gold cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. Rev. 17, 3, 4. This symbol reveals that after the woman had sat on the heads, united the churches, she also succeeded to sit on the beast. The beast is a symbol of the entire present world, both civil, 10 horns, and religious, 7 heads.
2 sealings, 2 confederacies, and 2 times of trouble.
So let's take a look just for a second at the parallel confederacies, okay? Because if we know the leopard-like beast and the scarlet-colored beast, if we know what all the symbolism means on them, and we look at the inspired interpretation, we can see that there are parallel confederacies and 2 times the trouble for 2 groups of saints. So as we just read, the Babylonian Confederacy during the time of the Scarlet-Colored Beast is worldwide, an international system of religion and a combination of church and state. And it occurs while communistic Russia, the horns, dominates the world. So the Assyrian Confederacy, as we can see here to the left, comes first under the leopard-like beast and occurs while the Protestant nations, Antitypical Assyria, dominate the world. The infographic shows the types: Assyria, Nineveh, and Babylon. And it shows below their modern-day counterparts. The anti-type, the Protestant nations, the USA, and Russia and her allies, the fallen churches, and the woman counterfeit religious system. So, see, our time of trouble is occurring during this period once again. We're going back to summarize this and review this. Having already gone through Jacob's time of trouble, we will be in the kingdom during the time of the Scarlet-Colored Beast and Babylon the Great. For the antitypical Babylon phase, the remnant of the woman's seed, remember, the remnant of the woman's seed are those coming out. They're coming out, the great multitude. Revelation 7:9. They are called out and go through a time of trouble such as never was on their way into the kingdom. So this is the time period that we're living in, and this is the one that is to come. And then you can see in between here, the kingdom is set up. It says Michael stands up. Revelation 12:1. The king of the north is going to be defeated. That's the United States. And then this is the transition period, because the king of the north flees the Holy Land. Okay, he has to flee, and he has to put his the branch of his tabernacle somewhere else, because he's going to lose the war, and because the kingdom is going to be established. So that's how we can see that this beast right here is going through its end stages, and this will be the transition period. And then as soon as we stand in the kingdom with the Lamb on Mount Zion, this is soon going to happen. First, the two-horned beast helps gather all the churches together under the woman. Remember, she sits on the heads first. And then the two-horned beast with the false prophet convinces the rest of the world to accept this false system of religion, this religious economic monstrosity. And that's when the woman rules both horn and heads, all the civil powers of the world, all the religious churches, that's when the call to come out of Babylon happens. And Brother Hodder says there must not be any hesitation to leave that territory and to come into the kingdom. Concerning the false prophet and the two-horned beast, you need to understand that the man 666 will become the world's chief dictator, the rod says, along with the false prophet.
Having only 2 horns, not 10, the beast therefore depicts a local, not a universal government. Nevertheless, he will influence all Christendom to make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword and did live. That is, he will engineer a worldwide governmental setup, re-enthroning the principles of the church-state rule of ecclesiastical Rome. Being the restorer of these principles, he, along with the prophet, will become the world's chief dictator, and shape not only the political and the religious policies of the governments, but also the world's commerce. He shall decree that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Revelation 13:17. This beast represents a man who stands at the head of a nation, and whose influence goes far and wide among the kings of the earth. He is further identified by a number, the mystical number 666. Revelation 13:18. Tract 12, page 26.
Now, under this time period, with the second man, 666, and the false prophet, that's when the Sunday law is going to be worldwide, a worldwide decree. That's the mark of the beast. That's the image of the beast, okay? And over here, when we go through our trouble, it's actually the healing of the wound. So the beast is just going back to a previous state, the state that it was before the wound was inflicted. Despotism is supposed to arise, and that happens through the Assyrian Confederacy of Isaiah 8. Okay, and that's the last act for this one. Well, I just explained that despotism in my last video. It is basically like authoritarian government. And so Brother Hodder does say in 3 separate statements that despotism is the last state of the leopard-like beast. So that confederacy, it starts in the United States, and we will see it spread to the allies of those of the United States and throughout the Assyrian Protestant nations. But they won't have communism and all that on board at this point, because they are going to be embroiled in a gigantic war. And the prophet says that the war, the Cold War with Russia, will become red hot. And he says that it's going to happen this way because Britain put their faith in atheistic Russia. That's why Russia, he said, none of the allies wanting anything except for Russia, basically. Russia is the one that kind of emerges as a world power and victor after World War II. And it's expanded mightily into many nations, many third world countries, developing third world countries, investing in third world countries, cementing their ties. And they're also doing BRICS, which they're trying to get the dollar cast out as the world reserve currency. And they're doing that because they basically want to bankrupt the United States. They know that if that dollar loses that status, that we're going to immediately go into a greater depression than the original one. So Russia is kind of doing all these strategic things, and it's on the rise. It's been on the rise since 1929, but it hasn't come into fruition yet. Okay, it has not come into fruition yet. When it emerges as the world power is after the gigantic war, when it emerges as the dominant world power, let's say, because the United States is going to suffer that blow. In Revelation 12, 16, and 17, it shows two things. Verse 16 shows Ezekiel 9 happening. And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened up her mouth and swallowed up the flood, which the dragon cast out of his mouth. Remember, that flood started with the early church, but it has continued, and we know that the earth swallowing up its mouth is yet future. We've never seen that happen. That's symbolism. Verse 17 is yet future. And the dragon was wroth with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus. So here in Revelation 16, we can see that this is the experience of the 144,000 and those that are sealed with them in the Adventist church. But verse 17 pictures the experience of those coming out of Babylon, because the dragon is wroth with the woman. He's wroth with God's church because he cannot touch them. He cannot touch the 144,000. And the prophet says that when they receive the seal, they are protected from everything and everybody, everyone and everything. So knowing that he can't touch that sealed class, he goes to try to prevent the second major harvest, which is the largest harvest of the two, and which is the great multitude, and he goes to war against them. So to review, the 144,000 are found in Revelation 7, Revelation 12, 16, like we just read, and Revelation 14, 1. So the 144,000 are pictured in Revelation 7, 1 through 8 with the four winds. Remember, those winds are held until they're sealed. And that wind is actually religious and political, the church allied with the state in common action. That's what Brother Hadif says. So those winds, when they blow, represent the church-state confederacy. So we must be sealed before this confederacy commences, is fully formed. Okay? The 144,000 are pictured escaping Ezekiel 9, and they're persecuted in Jacob's time of trouble. And then the 144,000 stand with the Lamb on Mount Zion and the kingdom in Revelation 14. 1 through 5. So going on to the great multitude are found in Revelation 7, 9. Okay, and they are pictured also with the four winds. They are the harvest that's seen immediate, or the group of saints seen immediately after the numbering of the 144,000. They are persecuted in the time of trouble and escape the 7 last plagues. And they're coming out of that system, that Babylonian system that we just went over with the woman ruling both the civil powers and the churches. They got to come out of that system right away, and they come out of Babylon into the kingdom. So what we end up with is two groups with parallel experiences. Both groups go through a time of trouble. Both face a time of judgment. Both escape the judgment. One escapes Ezekiel 9 and one escapes the 7 last plagues. Both are separated from sin and sinners, and both must be victorious in their respective time periods. Both are gathered into the kingdom.
The summary of the Scarlet-Colored Beast.
First of all, let it be understood that the SDA denomination is included in the symbols of the leopard-like beast of Revelation chapter 13, verses 1 through 10, and excluded from the scarlet-colored of Revelation 17. Symbolic Code Volume 1, number 17, page 6. Here in prophetic utterance is not only a promise to purify the church when modern Assyria is being crushed, but also a suggestive statement as to what constitutes meat in due season for men at A, and as to what movement they are to enlist in if they would make sure of salvation. They are enjoined to fix their vision upon the feet of him who brings good tidings, message from the Lord, who publishes peace, the peace of Christ's kingdom, and who declares that while the powers of earth are engulfed in a gigantic war, the wicked in the church shall be cut off, no more to pass through her. Tract 14, page 22. While the Lord is now marking the first fruits of his kingdom, those in Laodicea, the ancient men, supposing themselves to be doing his bidding by forcing the laity not to listen to the Lord's messengers and not to read his message in the shepherd's rod, are attempting to prevent them from receiving his mark, which is to keep them from perishing. And as prophecy shows, this war, when finished in Laodicea, spreads into Babylon as the Lord begins marking the second fruits of his kingdom, and as the beast, supposing himself, as do the ancient men now, to be doing the Lord's bidding, sternly decrees that all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, Revelation 13, verse 16, receive his mark rather than the Lord's, which is to keep them also from perishing. These two markings, the beast's and the Lord's, in themselves show a time of separating the citizens of heaven from the citizens of the world. And because this is a work such as never was, it brings the time of trouble such as never was, the great and dreadful day of the Lord. The present trouble in Laodicea is therefore to spread into Babylon and develop into the time of trouble such as never was, a development which shows that the same satanic power now working in Laodicea will soon fully manifest itself in consolidation with the beast within the churches in Babylon, there to oppose the marking of the second fruits as it is now in Laodicea opposing the marking of the first fruits. Tract 9, page 61. Again, the fact that the 10 horns, kings, have one mind, unlike the toe kings of Daniel 2:42-43, but have no kingdom of their own, besides the fact that the woman rules the beast, and also the fact that the communist leaders, crownless kings of the nations, and have one mind, work together for one common cause. All these facts show that though communism appears to be the next power to rule the world, this symbolical prophecy points out that the world will next be ruled by an international religious system, by Babylon the Great, a rival of the religion of Christ, and a counterfeit of the woman in Revelation chapter 12. The scarlet-colored beast, therefore, is the symbol of the world government into which the United Nations will finally evolve. Timely Greetings, Volume 2, number 8, page 20.
Furthermore, it is the period under the symbol of the woman riding on the beast that makes an image of the leopard-like in his first stage before wounded, or of the nondescript beast in his second stage, that's the hornhead beast. For the 1260-year period was represented by both beasts. The image is a false religion internationally set up. Therefore, one is the likeness of the other. It prophetically signifies that the image is the woman riding on the beast, the union of that religio-political system. So when that woman saddles the beast, creating a religious political system under one head, it creates an image, a copy of, a reflection of the leopard-like beast before the deadly wound was inflicted, or the nondescript with the horn head, Rome in its ecclesiastical stage. For these two beasts, they reign contemporaneously. They overlap and they both occupy that 42-month period.
Revelation 17:12 and 14. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. These kings are to be anti-religious and therefore anti-Christian. They shall eventually make war with the Lord and with his called, chosen, and faithful ones. But the Lamb shall overcome the kings. The woman, as shown before, is the symbol of a confederated religious system with which the horns are not only in disagreement, but are also her enemies. Consequently, after the symbolical hour is past, they unseat her from the beast, make her desolate, and burn her with fire. Then it is that they receive their kingdom for a season and time. Daniel 7:12. Verse 17. For God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree, and give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. The call to come out of Babylon, Revelation 18:4, is a call to God's people to come out of her geographic dominion. The 18th chapter is a continuation of the 17th, and so we shall study it also. Revelation 18:1. And after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. After what things? After the scarlet-colored beast comes into being, and while the woman, Babylon, is sitting upon him. It is then that the earth is to be lightened with the glory of the angel, with the message of the hour. Revelation 18:2-4. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her. And the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. And I heard another voice from heaven, saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. A heavenly voice, the Spirit of truth, is heard calling God's people out of Babylon, after the earth is lightened with the glory of the angel, for God's people to come out so that they be not partakers of her sins, and receive not of her plagues. They must necessarily be called into a place that is free from sin, and thus be saved from Babylon's plagues. Consequently, they go into a purified, sinless church, and a land that is not in danger of the plagues. Revelation 18:5-7. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her double according to her works. In the cup which she hath filled, fill to her double. How much she hath glorified herself, and lived deliciously, so much torment and sorrow give her. For she saith in her heart, I sit a queen, and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. She has rewarded God's people with evil, and now she is to be paid back double. She has boasted of ruling the world, and has said in her heart that she is not a widow, that God is her husband, but she finds herself mistaken. Revelation 18:8-13. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judgeth her. She has had everything put into her hands, and her hands put into everything. But now her glory comes to an end. Revelation 18:14-21. And the fruits that thy soul lusted after are departed from thee, and all things which were dainty and goodly are departed from thee, and thou shalt find them no more at all. The merchants of these things which were made rich by her shall stand afar off for the fear of her torment, weeping and wailing, and saying, Alas, alas, that great city, that was clothed in fine linen, and purple, and scarlet, and decked with gold, and precious stones, and pearls. For in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught. And every shipmaster, and all the company in ships, and sailors, and as many as trade by sea, stood afar off, and cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, What city is like unto this great city? And they cast dust on their heads, and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, Alas, alas, that great city, wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea by reason of her costliness. For in 1 hour is she made desolate. Rejoice over her, thou heaven, and ye holy apostles and prophets, for God hath avenged you on her. And a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone, and cast it into the sea, saying, Thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. What violence! And what an inglorious end when the 10 horns take hold of Babylon, the headquarters of that pretentious, self-righteous worldwide power. Now is our time and opportunity to get ready for the 4 winds to be let loose, and prepare an asylum, a sinless place for the gathering of the people, and for the finishing of the gospel work in all the world. Revelation 18:22-24. And the voice of harpers and musicians and of pipers and trumpeters shall be heard no more at all in thee, and no craftsman of whatsoever craft he be shall be found any more in thee. And the sound of a millstone shall be heard no more at all in thee, and the light of a candle shall shine no more at all in thee, and the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth, for by thy sorceries were all nations deceived, and in her was found the blood of prophets, and of saints, and of all that were slain upon the earth. We see that this system of government is set up for no other purpose than to make its adherents rich in the name of religion, a practice which supersedes all other forms of idolatry. If our hearts are set on wealth, if our love of money becomes greater than our love to help set up the kingdom, then there is no hope. Such shall find themselves magnetically drawn down into Babylon. We must remember that the love of money is the root of all evil, that it is easier for a camel to go through the needle's eye than for a rich man to enter into the kingdom. But sad to say, in spite of this solemn warning, we see even the most informed in the things of God fall victims to such filthy lucre. If we have the dollar when we need it, also are certain from day to day of our clothing, food, and a bed to sleep in, we should feel rich. We should feel as if we had $1 million in the bank. Yes, if we seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and mind the Lord's business, being slothful in nothing and conscientious in everything, then we shall have all these added unto us. Matthew 6:31-33. We have therefore again seen that the final world government is to be neither communistic nor capitalistic, but ecclesiastical and more in favor of capitalism than communism.